What's up, guys? We are back again this week. I hope you guys have a happy Halloween, man. It's that time of year. But today we're checking out a Memphis audio amplifier. Now, this is a 1500 watt monoblock, the 6.5 series VIV1500.1DV2. Now, this looks actually really similar to the old JL style amplifiers. We'll take a look inside and see if it's a similar kind of a copy or not, but it does look very similar. You got 1-aught power inputs, 2 sets of 12-gauge speaker inputs, your RCA in, and these do have low-level inputs. They give you a pigtail here. So if you were going to use high-level, speaker ins, you would just connect those to the RCAs and then flip that switch right there accordingly. And also it has a signal sensing remote on. So if you don't want to use a remote power wire here, you can just flip this switch. And when it senses audio, it'll turn the amp on. But pretty nice looking amp. It's got a brushed like gray finish that looks real nice. And see how it says reversible LED strip? I wasn't sure what that meant, but basically it's just this sticky cover is not stuck on yet. So you can flip it upside down however you mount your amp. So the texts are right side up for whatever, mounting position you have it. So I guess that's kind of cool. I'm kind of picky. I like my, stuff to be right side up. So cool little feature. It does have LEDs. I'll show you that later. And it says that you can change the colors. So let's go ahead and flip this thing over. But it is a nice looking amp. Really reminds me of the older JL audio amps, especially the 750 that I dynoed a few months back. You can check that out. But let me go ahead and get it flipped over and I'll show you guys the other side. So it has a magnetic cover, which is nice. No screws to remove, so you don't lose screws or lose the panel. It's just these magnets kind of catch on these 2 screws right here, which is nice. So you have all your normal functions, your gain, subsonic filter, crossover, your bass boost section, which has the center frequency, bass boost, and then the Q setting. The Q is just how much around the frequency you set the bass boost affects. Then you have your LED color knob, and we'll check that out when you hook it up. So apparently this has multiple colors. You can change the LED to whichever color you like best. But I really dig the cover. I like that it's not a separate piece like the JLs where you can lose them or lose the screws. So this does say it's a 1500 watt amp. These are about $280. I'll put a link in the description below. Depending on the power it puts out, if it does put out 1500 watts, it's a little on the pricey side, but it's not ridiculous. There's a lot of amps that, especially JL, Fosgate make that for 1500 watts, you're going to be paying 4 or 5 times as much as this. So it's not the cheapest. It's kind of middle of the range, price point. But we'll go ahead and hook it up to the dyno and see the actual numbers it puts up. And then I'm going to put a chart up with all the efficiencies as well. But if you guys are running this, please chime in. No one's ever talking about Memphis. So I wanted to do this amp because I don't see much about them. And I know they're good amps, and they're decent stuff. So, it's just fun trying new things. But definitely chime in if you guys have one of these or have any experience with it. But let's go ahead and get it hooked up and see what this thing actually puts out. And first, I want to show you guys the LEDs here real quick when we power it up. Okay, so here it's hooked up and you can see the strip that you can flip around whichever way you want it to fit your installation direction. And that just has adhesive, so you just pull it off and stick it on there. And it does look kind of junky, but there's that clear protective cover on the top, so it'll look nice once you peel that off. So the first color there is purple, blue, and then the potentiometer does click. Light blue, green. So it is kind of cool. Yellow, orange, and I think red. So there's all your colors. It's kind of cool, I guess, if you want to match the LED. So definitely a cool feature. So nice looking amp. Let's go ahead and get it hooked up. I'm going to set it back here to blue just because I'm partial to blue for some reason. Anyway, let's get going. All right, starting off as usual, 4 ohm test. Now this is certified. It stops reading when it hits 1% THD. So this is basically max clean power output. The manual says 375 watts at 4 ohm. So it did it, 429 certified. We drew 41 amps, and I will put a results chart up later with all the efficiencies so you guys can check it out. I know a lot of you guys, efficiency is important because it's less draw on your electrical system. And I'm keeping the voltage here around stock electrical. I'm not running this thing at 15, 16 volts, so I'm keeping it real. Most of the guys buying these are just going to have normal cars with normal alternators, normal voltage. So next we're doing uncertified. So this is max power up to clipping. See if it does a little bit more. A little bit more, 435. The efficiency seems all right so far. Can't really tell, I haven't calculated it, but we'll check that later. So next we're going to do dynamic burst. So this is real power, but it's just what the amp can produce for a short split-second burst. Like on a drum set, you know, a kick drum or just a short instantaneous hit. And it's using a lot of the power that's stored in the capacitors and whatnot. And that's why it's a burst. Once those caps drain, then it's relying solely on the power supplies. But it is real power. Some guys don't think dynamic is real power. A little bit more, not much. Pretty much the same. Well, 437. There we go. So it did over the 375 watts in the manual. So next we're going to go ahead and do 2 ohm. And 2 ohm, we're looking for 750 watts. So let's see what happens here. And it is ramping up nice and smooth, which is a good sign. So we got 812 watts certified up to 1% THD at 2 ohm. Manual said 750, so it hit it just a little bit over. So far so good. Amp's getting a little bit warm, but not too bad. The dyno is pretty hard because it's just a static load, so it's always a little harder on the amp on the dyno than it is in a vehicle hooked up to an actual subwoofer. $821 uncertified, 74.6 amps. So it did do, again, over what it was rated at 4 ohm and 2 ohm so far. I did a Memphis 3K, I think a year ago. It was actually a really nice amp. It was very expensive for a 3K, but sounded really good. I think it was like $800 or something, so it was pretty pricey for a 3K. But the Memphis stuff seems to be pretty good quality. So dynamic burst, it's sticking right around the same numbers. So 833 dynamic at 2 ohm. So next up, the manual says 1500 watts at 1 ohm. We'll see if it can do it. So far, the amp's done pretty well. Haven't had it go into protect or anything weird, which is always a good sign. Oh, looks like it's just fallen a little bit short. I mean, I'll call that a pass, but 1447 watts, stopping at 1% THD. We drew 146.2 amps. A lot of guys ask, you know, how much, you know, what's the biggest amp I could put on a daily driver? It just depends on the car. If you have a little passenger car, it might only have a 120 amp alternator, but if you have a SUV, it might have a 200 amp alternator. And a lot of the newer cars even have bigger alternators, so that it really depends. But keep in mind when you're watching this current draw, this is on a static load. You're not going to see this amount of current draw in a vehicle because of impedance rise. Oh, still not making it to the 1500, but again, that's a total pass. 1489 watts at 2 ohm certified. I bet it will hit the 1500 mark dynamically here. So far the amp's doing pretty good. Not getting overly hot. Some amps get really hot on the dyno. It's just kind of a sign if an amp has enough cooling heatsink material. Well, there you go. So 1538. So it basically just hit the 1500 watt mark, but hey, at least it does 1500 watts. It's not like one of these amp companies that it's a 1500 watt amp and it does 500. So nobody likes that. So not bad. And it does look pretty nice. It's staying pretty cool. So far, so good. It's doing great. It's just if the price is worth it to you. But it kind of looks nice. It's kind of got like a Kenwood JL look to it. So it's kind of a refined looking amp. All right, let me get the back off and we'll see what's inside. All right, here we go. A little more work to take the back off on this amp, but still not too bad. Definitely an interesting looking amp. What I noticed right away, it's kind of odd, is the MOSFETs. There's brackets on this side of the board, but they're mounted to the back side of the board. So it's not typical where they're mounted on the edge and they, have the brackets mounting them to the aluminum heatsink material. So they're just on the back side of the board. But everything looks decent so far. Kind of an interesting design. I don't think I've ever seen this. I don't think it's a JL copy. I could be wrong. I'm not like a huge JL fan. I haven't done a whole lot with them. But I'm going to take this cover off here and try to show you guys back behind. So if I can get a look in here, you can see the thermal compound and the thermal pad kind of going between the MOSFET. So it is using the housing as heatsink material, which is good. At first I thought that was kind of weird, but just a different orientation. So interesting. Never seen that before. You guys can chime in if you know any other amps that use this design, but it is kind of different. But everything looks good. The amp did fine. No issues. Didn't overly get hot. Didn't go under protect. So let me know what you guys think. But cool looking little amp. Very interesting little design. Haven't quite seen this before, like I said. All right, let's get to the results sheet. All right, so nothing crazy. It's about average for a Class D. You guys can pause this if you want to look at it. But for the most part, it did what it said it was going to do. All right, so let me know what you guys think on this amplifier. If it's worth it or not, I will put a link in the video description below. If you guys want to check this out, it's the best price that I have found. Also, if you guys can take a minute, check out my website, HiFiVector.com. Make my own car audio amplifiers, bass knobs, custom cooling fans, all kinds of car audio products. But yeah, so let me know what you guys think. Really interesting because not a lot of people talk about Memphis, but they're a big brand. They're a legacy brand. They've been around for a long time. So this is not the most cheapest 1500 watt amp, but it's not a ridiculously priced one either. I'd call it a fair price. It's kind of right in the middle of the road. We've gotten so used to cheap stuff that sometimes people feel like it's the norm, but you got to remember it's not everything's going to be dirt cheap. There's still good value on mid-range price stuff. So let me know what you guys think. Please comment on these amps that not many people talk about anymore. It'd be fun to hear people's input on Memphis and the stuff that they're selling. I did a 3K a while back last year. You can check it out. It did really great on power. It was a little expensive, but it was a great amp. So if you can get over the price tag, I really like the magnetic cover on this and the controls. So you're not going to ever lose the panel. You don't have to unscrew it like some other amplifiers that are this style. The LEDs are a cool touch. I like that you can flip around the badge, for however you're going to mount it. So not bad. I really don't have anything bad to say. Decent amp. Am I in love with it? Not really, but it's a great amp as far as I'm concerned. But again, let me know what you guys think. And I just want to thank you guys so much for watching, man. I appreciate you guys a lot. You guys have a safe and happy Halloween, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Please be advised, no amplifiers were harmed during the making of this video.